Welcome to Lessons with Scott. I'm Scott Nipper. Today's lesson focuses on the three things that every guitar, including yours, must have. The first thing that your guitar must have is intonation. Proper intonation means the guitar is in tune with itself. Being in tune with itself means that you can play any note anywhere up and down the fretboard and it will be in tune. If the guitar is not in tune with itself, then you will never be in tune when you're playing with anybody else, and you'll never be in tune anywhere more than 5 frets away from a particular fret on your fretboard, depending on what you've tuned to. So for example, let's take a look. So on this guitar, if you're in the intonation is checked by hitting the harmonic on the 12th fret and then pressing the note on the 12th fret. And those two should be in agreement with each other. And the best way to tell that is on a tuner. The saddles on this particular bridge have screws that allow you to move the saddle backwards or forward depending on whether the harmonic is sharp or flat with the fretted note. So what happens when the guitar is not in tune with itself is that if you tune to an open E and everything is perfectly in tune, when you go up as much as, typically it's about 5 frets, when you get up to the 5th fret, that will be out of tune. And then of course the further up you go, the more out of tune it gets. If you tune to this position, then all the notes within a few frets of this position will be in tune, but once you go beyond, they'll be out of tune. And that makes it extremely difficult to not only play with other musicians, it makes it frankly impossible to play with other musicians, but it also makes it difficult to play even when you're playing by yourself. And so proper intonation is probably the single most important aspect of a guitar. And you want to make sure that you can intonate the guitar before you purchase a guitar. Because if the guitar bridge position is such that you can't move the saddles enough one direction or enough to get the guitar perfectly in tune, then the guitar is worthless. And some guitars, you can't move the saddle. Acoustic guitars, for example, you can't move the saddle. So it's really important on acoustic guitars that you get a guitar that is in tune with itself. And most high quality guitars are built with the bridge and the saddle in such a position that they are in tune. That's checked, and it's really a function of mathematics. Primarily, but it's also a function of the construction of the guitar and the types of woods used, and there's a lot of variables at play here, but most importantly is the positioning of the saddles and that they be correct and have enough play so that you can modify the adjustment. Different strings will affect intonation, and that's one reason that on electric guitars particularly you have the saddle adjustable, so that as you change strings you can adjust to the different string types that you're using. Not only string types, but the string thicknesses. And so if you use a set of 9s, for example, where the first string is a .009, then the intonation is likely to be different than if you use what's called 11s or .011 diameter strings. On acoustic guitars, that is also true, and that's why you should listen to the manufacturer's recommendation for the gauge of strings that are recommended for that particular guitar, because typically what that means is the manufacturer has built the guitar with the idea that you're going to use a particular gauge of strings. For example, on acoustic guitars, a 12 is a medium gauge string, and is a very typical gauge for 12 string for acoustic guitars. And so if the manufacturer recommends a 12, or if you buy the guitar and it's got 12s on it, then there's a pretty good chance that that guitar was manufactured to those specifications for 12s. And if you start changing the gauge of the strings, you could impact the intonation and the overall sound of your guitar and its ability to play in tune. All right, so that's a little bit about intonation. The proper intonation and how to set this and how to actually use a tuner to intonate your guitar is demonstrated in my troubleshooting and maintenance tips lesson. So be sure to watch that lesson for information on how to set your intonation. All right, the second thing that is a must-have for every guitar is a true neck. In other words, the neck needs to be straight. The neck needs to be straight within itself. In other words, it can't have any bumps or warpage in it, either in this direction or in this direction. And so you do that, you check that by looking down the neck, either from the butt of the guitar, or you can place the guitar on the ground and look at it from this direction. You'll see people doing it in both ways. And what you're looking for, and what I do is I close one eye and I'm able to look at the fretboard all the way down from the first fret all the way to the last fret, and what you're looking for is straightness, and that's called a true neck. And what you're trying to avoid is anywhere where you might see a little bump somewhere along the neck, and either at the treble side or at the bass side. And you're also looking across the width of the neck to see if there's any warpage, if the neck is maybe tilted one way or the other, or the other tilted the other way. What we're not looking for is any relief in the neck. That is adjustable using the truss rod, and that's actually the shape of the neck. What we're looking at is the flatness of the neck. And what I find is that it's easier for me to view it from this angle because I can really see whether or not this neck is warped or bent or misshapen in this direction. And you can also see if it's misshapen in this direction. A neck that is not true is never going to be truly playable. There will always be spots along the neck where you'll have dead spots, where you'll play a note and it's just dead because you're not getting good fret contact, or perhaps it buzzes because there's a bump and the fret in front of it is touching the string just a little bit when you play it, and so it buzzes, and that's impossible to get out. If your neck is not true, that's not something that's fixable with a truss rod adjustment. Truss rod adjustment is for something else. So a true neck is absolute must for any guitar, and certainly for your guitar. The third thing that is the must-have for all guitars is the feel. And this is something that is personal to you, as opposed to intonation or trueness of the neck. Those things are objective. You can look, you can hear, you can tell if those items are the way they should be or not, and whether or not they are correctable if they're not. Of course, a true neck is not correctable. If it's not true, it's not true, and that guitar is a guitar to avoid. Intonation, if it's not intonated, then you want to check and see if it's intonatable, and if it is, then before you purchase a guitar, if you haven't purchased a guitar yet, you want to make sure that it can be adjusted to where it does get in tune with itself before you buy it. If it's not, if it can't be intonated, don't buy it. If you have a guitar that is not intonated and can't be intonated, get rid of it and get one that is. But the feel of a guitar is not objective. It's completely subjective. And everybody has a different opinion for what the feel is, for what feel is right for them. And for example, I like a slimline neck. And so the neck on this ES335 is perfect for me, and because it fits my hand. I don't have a great big hand, and so it really fits my hand nice. It's got a nice C-shaped contour on it, and it's not too wide, and it's not too thick. And those are the things that I look for in a neck. Oftentimes you'll pick up a guitar that has a very wide neck. Les Pauls are known. The 50 style neck on a Les Paul is a pretty wide neck, and I avoided Les Pauls for years and years because of that fact. It was just too wide for my fingers. It was just too hard for me to get my fingers and my hand around to play the way that I play. And the thickness is also an important feature for me. You'll hear sometimes a term that a neck feels like a baseball bat. And what that means is that it's really thick and bulky, and some people like those types of necks. And frankly, when a neck has more mass to it, when it's thicker like that, it actually can have more sustain to it because there's more mass. There's more wood there to vibrate the sound. So very often, that's one of the reasons the classic Les Pauls sound so good, is because they do have a big neck, a big fat neck. And so they have incredible sustain. SGs are known for that as well. And so that's part of the appeal, is that they have this tremendous, wonderful sustain to them, and it gives them a little bigger, fatter sound. And that's largely because of that big neck. So it's a trade-off for me. I don't get that big of a sound, but that's okay, because 90% of playing is in your fingers anyway. So that's that neck. I do have a Les Paul here, and the reason I got this Les Paul is because they came out with a standard that had a slimline neck, and they finally did that. And there were some odd Les Pauls that you could get from time to time that had slimline necks, but they started manufacturing them with the option of getting the 50 style neck, which is the bigger, fatter neck, or the 60 style neck, which they call the slimline neck. Although really this neck is more like the 335 and is more fashioned around that, so it has that same type of feel to it. And it's not too wide, it's not too thick, it's very consistent with the 335. So many years ago I picked one of these up, and I just love it. Same holds true with, let's say, a Fender. Fenders are notorious for having lots of different styles of necks, and in fact, up until probably just 10 or 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of consistency in the necks, and so you could pick up a Fender, and one would be completely different from the next. And that, of course, is true today, but they've kind of categorized the neck shapes into the V neck, the soft V, the C, the U shape. There's several different versions of the neck, and what that refers to is the shape back here around the neck, from the top of the fretboard back around to the bottom, or the higher strings. And so this curvature, I use a C neck, and so as you can see, it's sort of shaped like a C, hence the name. The V necks, popular on the Eric Clapton model, for example, is sort of shaped like a V. And so when you put your hand around it, for me, I don't like that. I'm not sure what I feel like I'm grabbing, but it's not very comfortable to me. Lots of people love it, and if that's the size for you, then more power to you. And that's of course why they make the different sizes. but I like a C neck. So, and this one happens to be a small neck. This is my favorite neck. If every neck I played, and I've had this guitar for close to 30 years now, and if every neck on every guitar I've ever had was like this, then I'd be one happy camper. And in fact, that's what I look for when I am shopping for a new guitar, is a neck like this. This is my benchmark neck. And in fact, I'm getting ready to buy a new guitar because, as you can see, this neck is pretty worn, and I need a complete fret job on this neck because it is so worn and the frets are worn. But I just hate to do it because I just love the feel of this neck. And so feel is the third most important aspect of your guitar that you have to have right. If a guitar doesn't feel right, then it's not right. It's not the right guitar for you. And so you may not know, if you're a beginner, you may not know one feel from another feel, and that's okay. You'll get that with experience, and it's okay to buy a guitar that you think maybe feels right at the time, but after time you find out that perhaps it's not, or as you improve with your skills. A lot of new players like a guitar with a relatively thin neck, somewhat wide, and with a radius on it that's very flat. Jackson guitars, Ibanez guitars, people that are into shredding and that type of style love those kind of guitars. And one of the reasons is because it's so easy to move your fingers around on the fretboard. The radius, when I mention radius, what I'm talking about is the shape of the neck on the fretboard. And so they all have a radius. So you can get guitars that are perfectly flat, but that's not really conducive to playing. One of the drawbacks of a really flat radius, like a 16 radius, anything above about a 12, is a pretty flat neck. And what I find when I play a neck like that is that my fingers get tired after a while. They fatigue much more easily. And that's just due to the ergonomics of your fingers and playing and moving up and down the neck. I like a neck that has a radius on it. My Gibsons have a 12, and that's okay. Anything beyond that would be too flat for me. Most Fenders have a 9.5 radius, and nowadays you find guitars have a contoured radius, and so they get flatter the further up you get. One nice thing about a flat radius is that you can bend strings a lot easier, and you don't fret out. So this one happens to fret out. You probably can't hear that too well, and I'll have other videos where I showcase that a little bit more. This one's not too bad because I've set the action a little bit to adjust for that, and we'll talk about action in another video. In fact, my maintenance and troubleshooting lesson is the lesson where I talk about action, how to set it, what it is, and that sort of thing. So once again, the number one thing is intonation. The second thing is a true neck. The third must-have is that it feels right for you. Okay, that's this lesson. Thanks for watching Lessons with Scott.